I'm, the shirt says, I'm God's. So, I'm God's. Years ago, many years ago, there was a temple in Jerusalem, and it was beautiful. I know some people that have gone to Jerusalem, but there is no beautiful temple in Jerusalem today. There was, years ago, a beautiful temple in Jerusalem. And some things had happened there that that you can read about in the history book titled Bible. I happen to have the history book in front of me. And the history book is made up of, it's according to which one you got, I believe it's 66 books. Well, two of which I have here in front of me. I got Matthew and John. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And these four have several chapters. And toward the end of those, you come to where you can read about Jesus of Nazareth, a man, not a God, a man who had been born and had been brought to the temple and presented to God after everything had been done according to the law of Moses. Today, the law of Moses is not what I'm worried about. The law of Moses has done its due, so to speak. Now, there are people today that don't understand that, but I'm not one of them. The law of Moses, the law that God gave to Moses, and it was written, and you can find most of it or some of it in the history book titled Bible. But the law of Moses had nothing to do with this crucifixion that takes place in Jerusalem years ago. Unless somebody just comes up with some story about it, you know. The law of Moses had to be fulfilled. The crucifixion of Jesus had nothing to do with the law of Moses. Jesus grew up keeping the law of Moses, as did others in that day. And I just hope that today none of you are depending upon the law of Moses to save you or someone else. But in the books of John and Matthew, it has a chapters in it that talks about the crucifixion and the man being crucified. In John chapter 13, you can find some of it. And Jesus is the one that will be crucified. And he is teaching and telling his disciples that he will die. Because he says, right there in about the middle of chapter 13, Jesus answered, "That is the one for whom I shall dip the morsel and give it to him." That was the sign of who was going to betray Jesus for and deliver him up for crucifixion. That it was decided and made known right there. So when he had dipped the morsel, he took it and gave it to Judas, Simon Iscariot. And after the morsel, Satan then entered into him. And that's when Jesus spoke, saying, "What you do, do quickly." Folks, and no one of those reclining or sitting there at the table with Jesus knew why Jesus had said the words, "What you do, do quickly." But anyway, he goes on, and he said, after receiving the morsel, he went out immediately, and it was night. That was Judas Iscariot went out immediately. And therefore, when he had gone, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also bring him to himself and will glorify him immediately. Little children, I am with you a little while longer. You shall seek me. And as I said to the Jews, I say now to you also, where I am going, you cannot come." And he said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another." Judas is not there. He's gone. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And that's when Peter said to him, "Where are you going? Where I go, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow later." And Jesus said one more thing, and you can read it. It's in John chapter 13.